to a band 6, how long do you think I will need? How much time do I need to invest in order for me to be able to get to a band 6?
Okay, so it's commonly thought that to move up a full band, you need about 200 hours of study, which sounds like a lot, right? This is an overall band, right? You need about 200 hours of study. And that does sound like a lot, but keep in mind that this is progress, it's little by little, right? Everything with getting better at the IELTS or getting better at speaking another language in general is baby steps. You cannot go overnight from a band 4 to a band 5 just by learning a few techniques. It does require practice in all 4 skills. So to answer your question, to get from a band 4 to a band 6, you're probably looking more at about 200 hours of study total. Now, that's just an estimate. Everyone learns languages at a different rate. Everyone is a different kind of learner, right? We all learn at different speeds. So don't pressure yourself to learn too fast. Starting earlier on your IELTS journey is better, right? If you're preparing to take an IELTS test in order to get into a university or to move on to higher education, try not to start focusing on it just 1 month or 2 weeks before the test, right? Start early and start developing those skills. And also, there are techniques for taking the IELTS test, and sometimes you can have a really great speaker who's quite fluent, but the problem is they don't know how to take the IELTS test because there's a method to it. You need to know how the test is constructed and what the expectations are. For example, knowing that in speaking, you need to speak for 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes in that part 2, right? You can't speak for just 10 seconds. Sometimes a great speaker might not know that, so they say, yeah, and they give a short answer and they think that's enough, right? So sometimes knowing what to expect and knowing how to manage your time on the test is just as important as your actual English level. So it goes hand in hand with developing your overall English skill, knowing the structure of the test, and thirdly, knowing the techniques that you can use. For example, such as scamming and skimming for reading, like I just mentioned. These are the keys to improving your score over time. But practice makes perfect. That's the important thing, is you have to keep practicing. You can't just get better at IELTS via theory, right? You can't just listen to someone explain techniques to you. You need to try it. You need to make mistakes. You need to get feedback from your teachers, from your tutors, and you need to accept that feedback and keep gradually improving yourself. So baby steps, little by little, but anyone can get there. Anyone can get the score they achieve with hard work, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So remember, everyone, you can get your desired score as long as you put in enough effort. Okay. Now, right, Zach. Also, some students also actually asked me this previously, right? What sections, so from listening, reading, writing, and speaking, which sections usually most students will struggle with, in your opinion?
Yeah, so everyone is a different kind of learner, right? And everyone has strengths and weaknesses. So there's no one-size-fits-all answer to this question. So some students could be really strong in listening, and they may be terrible in speaking, right? Or some people may have really strong receptive skills, listening and reading, but their productive skills are weak because they don't have much practice producing speech and producing writing. Other people are on the other side of the spectrum. Some people are really good at writing and speaking and expressing themselves, but they may struggle when it comes to the demands of reading and the demands on your listening ability that the IELTS entails. So really, there's no one fit. What you really need to do to know is to take a practice IELTS test. You can do it at a center like ICAN, right? And from that, you can start to gauge where your strengths and weaknesses lies. And then a tutor can work with you to improve where you need some help. So there's no one area where everyone struggles, but there is a trend in general with productive skills. I do notice in my experience that people struggle quite a bit with their writing, for example, because they may not be used to the essay structure, the kind of essay structures that you need to have in IELTS. Of course, some people struggle with speaking just because they get so nervous, right? Other people, listening can be really difficult because, let's admit it, the IELTS listening is very challenging. When you only get to listen to a recording one time, you can't hit pause and rewind like you can with this podcast, right? You can't listen to a section again, and catching the answers the first time is really difficult. And so I guess what I'm saying, I'm kind of going on and on, right? But there is no one particular difficult spot that's difficult for everyone. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses, but doing a practice test is the best way to find out where yours are, and then you know where you need to improve.
Thank you. Right. Next, let's talk about accents.
Accents, okay.
A lot of people are worried about this.
Yeah.
Like, for example, when they speak with the examiner, they're afraid they cannot understand the British accent.
Sure.
And they're worried about their own accent, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, do you think this is important in the IELTS speaking test?
So accents are not considered important in it. And the thing is, everyone has an accent, right? There's no such thing as someone who has no accent, right? Whether it's a British accent or a Canadian accent or an Australian accent or an Indonesian accent, everyone has some kind of an accent. When the examiner is listening to you speak on the speaking test, they're not judging you based on your accent, because there is no one accent, right, that is accepted. Rather, what they're listening to are things like your intonation, all right? Where you put the stress on syllables and words, how you pronounce the consonants, right? Whether you're pronouncing the consonants correctly. These are things that are universal with English, and regardless of what your accent is, everyone needs to put the stress on the right vowels, the stress on the right words. That's how you get the correct flow of the language, and that's separate from accent. So if you feel like you have a thick accent and you're trying to change it, you don't need to. Be proud of your accent, right? The important thing is your intelligibility. How clear are you? How easy are you to understand? Do you speak crisply and clearly? And do you have the stress on the correct syllables, on the correct words? Is your intonation correct? The rising and falling of your voice. These are universal for all English speakers, because no matter what our accent is, we're going to hear that same flow in the language. And those are more what the examiner is listening for. Now, in terms of being worried about the examiner's accent, well, the reality of the English language is it's spoken all over the world, and there are so many accents around the world, and you never actually know what accent your examiner will have until you get in and sit down across from them. And that's going to depend on where they are from, right? And you never know. So the best way that you can prepare for this, really, is to expose yourself to a variety of accents. And that could be in podcasts like this one. That could be watching movies, listening to interviews on YouTube, listening to people speak. Try to get familiar as an English user of different accents, because when native speakers are growing up, we constantly hear in movies and on TV all kinds of different accents, and so we tend to get very used to understanding a wide variety. But it can be more difficult if you're learning English as a second or additional language to understand all those accents, because you'll probably be the most used to what your teacher speaks. So if you had a teacher from the UK for a long time, you'll probably be very used to a UK accent. You might have one yourself. If your teacher was from the US or Canada, you're going to be very accustomed to a different kind of accent. And so expose yourself through different media to as many different kinds of accents as you can, so that you're prepared when you sit down in that room with the examiner. No matter what accent they have, you'll be able to pick up on the meaning of what they're asking, even if you might miss a word here or there.
Right, okay. Now, also, some students are also worried about adapting at a new place, right? Yeah. Let's say, for example, they get a band 6. We know that when they get a band 6, that means they still make mistakes. Grammar, vocabulary, right? Now, let's say they get a band 6 and then they move to UWI Bristol, right? In which there are so many native speakers around them, so people are like, oh, they speak too fast, I cannot really understand, I cannot catch up. Do you think this is a common problem for the students at UWI Bristol?
Well, I do speak to a lot of current students and also alumni, and they all tell me that when, they don't all say this, but a good amount of them do, they say that when they first get to the UK and they first get to Bristol, people are speaking faster than they ever anticipated, right? Because suddenly you're going from sort of practice materials that you've had, and possibly you've used learning materials where people speak a little bit more slowly and clearly, and then you get to everyday speech, and no matter what language we speak, in casual everyday life, we all talk fast, right? We all talk fast for a learner. right? And so sometimes when people get to that native English-speaking environment in the UK, they find that people are speaking really fast, and they're exposed to a whole new variety of accents. For example, there is a Bristolian accent, and there's a Bristolian dialect, right? And so people will get there, and they'll think, ooh, this isn't the British accent that I thought I knew. And it takes some adapting. But one thing that especially alumni have told me after they've come back to their home countries, they've graduated at UE with their undergrad or their postgrad, is that they did adapt, and just over time, by getting out there in society, interacting with people, they picked up on it pretty quickly, right? The local accent. And the big thing about that is go out there and socialize. So when you go to study abroad, it's not just about getting a degree, right? It's about getting international experience. It's about adapting to a new society and learning a new culture. And to do that, you really have to put yourself out there, make some friends, right? And make international friends. Get used to hearing all these different accents that people come with from all over the world, right? And that's really the key, is socializing. But if you keep yourself in a small bubble with just your close friends that you're comfortable with, unfortunately, you'll never expand your receptive abilities for listening and understanding. So if you do get that chance to go abroad, you know there are so many people that would love to have the chance to study abroad. And if you get that chance, you've worked really hard to do it, and you're also really privileged to have an opportunity that not everyone in the world gets. Make the most of it. Go out and become a part of the society. You know, enjoy speaking with people. Go to shops. Get out there and talk to people. And your listening will improve. Your mind will quickly adapt to any kind of new accent or dialect.
Right, okay. Now lastly, how do you think, can we prepare for an IELTS test? I know that we're going to take a look at questions, we're going to try to understand and answer them. Yeah. But other than that, what can they do so that they can make it a little bit more fun?
Yeah.
The learning process.
Yeah.
However, it still helps them to further improve their score. What do you think they should do?
Yeah. Well, good question. We all know that practice makes perfect, right? But I think practicing with a friend, because you can practice with a tutor, of course, right? You can have a teacher, but you can't be with a teacher all the time, right? We have a limited amount of time that we have for actual classes to look at questions. Now, hopefully, your teachers will be making it fun, right? Because we learn better when we're having fun. In your free time, when you're at home and thinking, how do I get better? Try practicing with a friend, peer learning. And one example of how you can do this is give each other a speaking test. One person plays the role of an examiner, one person plays the role of the examinee, all right, or the student, and take turns doing that. So you can look up lots of different questions online for part 1, part 2, part 3. Have fun playing these roles, and then give each other feedback. And if you're with a trusted friend, they won't have a problem saying, you know what, I think you messed up one of your words there. I think you mispronounced that. Enjoy doing that, because practice really does make perfect, but just practicing alone and speaking into a mirror isn't nearly as fun as being with a friend. So try doing some of that role play. You can also work with a friend for writing as well. Try writing an essay, right? Just like with IELTS, say an essay task 2 or task 1. Have your friend write about the same topic, and then look at your essays together. Give them some constructive criticism and receive constructive criticism for them. The benefit of this is that not only do you receive some notes that your friend may have, they may not be the best notes in the world if you're both learners, but you'll get some feedback. But by giving some constructive criticism to your friend's writing, right, or your friend's speaking, it will get you thinking about the role of an examiner and how an examiner is looking at your work. And that will give you more insight into the process, right? So you get some direction for how you can improve based on what examiners are looking for. If you want to practice things like listening and reading, there are some great resources online. One that I recommend sometimes is miniielts.com. That's M-I-N-I. miniielts.com. That's a free resource for practicing listening and reading, and it's got a variety of really fun topics, so you can pick the topic of the reading or the listening that you want to do. And so it'll have audio and questions, it'll give reading and IELTS questions, and after you answer, it will just automatically tell you what was right and what was wrong. That's a fun way to practice at home, rather than just going to a website and downloading some old IELTS test and looking at the questions. I find mini IELTS is a fun way. So that's a recommendation to check out if you're listening and you haven't been to that website before.
Right. Thank you very much, Zach. That was very helpful. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. I think that's the end of our podcast, and we're looking forward that you're watching our next video. Thank you very much.